The envelope trembled in my hands, its contents already burning through the paper like acid. My mother's handwriting, perfect loops and measured strokes, spelled out instructions for dismantling my life. I'm Sophie, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought my solo trip to Thailand would be my greatest act of rebellion. Instead, it became the catalyst for my mother's most ambitious power play yet. The letter had waited on my doorstep when I returned home, along with a stack of mail and a potted plant from Wyatt that had somehow survived my absence. I slid my finger under the seal, the paper's edge drawing blood, a tiny red dot that seemed too appropriate for what I was about to read. Your presence is required at the family meeting this Sunday. Dr. Gary will facilitate our discussion about your recent choices. My mother's words carried their usual poison honey tone. Even on paper, she'd been scheduling these interventions since I was 16, each one designed to realign me with her vision of perfect family harmony. I dropped onto my couch, the leather cool against my bare legs. My phone buzzed, a text from my younger sister. "Mom's on the warpath, says you've gone too far this time." I typed back, "What's she telling everyone?" The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "That you abandoned Emma's graduation prep to chase some spiritual awakening. She's got Kelly convinced you're having a breakdown." Of course she did. My mother had always excelled at crafting narratives that painted her as the concerned parent, while simultaneously destroying any credibility I might have. The fact that Emma's graduation was still 4 months away, or that I'd specifically planned my trip during her school term, wouldn't matter in my mother's revised version of events. I called Wyatt. "Tell me I'm overreacting," I said when he picked up. "You're not." His voice carried the weight of 20 years of witnessing my family's dysfunction. "I found something while you were gone, about Dr. Gary." My stomach clenched. "What kind of something?" "The kind that explains why he's always backed your mother's plays. Come over, you need to see this yourself." I glanced at the letter again, at the meeting time written in my mother's precise hand. "Sunday, 12 p.m. 3 days to prepare." "Give me 20 minutes, I said. The drive to Wyatt's apartment gave me time to think. Each mile marked another memory. My father's vacant stare whenever I begged for support. Kelly's strange satisfaction whenever my mother tore into me. Emma's growing distance as she absorbed the family poison. Wyatt waited in his doorway, holding a manila folder. "Remember when you mentioned Dr. Gary seemed too invested in your family dynamics?" I nodded, following him inside. I did some digging. He spread several papers across his kitchen counter. "Look at the dates on these consultation notes." The timestamps showed sessions dating back 15 years, long before my first official meeting with Dr. Gary. Notes in his scratchy handwriting detailed strategies for maintaining family cohesion and managing resistant elements. "He's been coaching my mother?" My voice sounded distant, even to myself. "Worse." Wyatt pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. "He's been teaching her manipulation techniques. There's a whole methodology here: isolation, gaslighting, emotional leverage points. Sophie, this isn't therapy, it's a playbook." The room tilted slightly. I steadied myself against the counter, my fingers brushing the papers that documented years of calculated control. "My father must know," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I doubted them. "There's more." Wyatt hesitated. "Kelly's name is in here too. She's been meeting with him separately for months." The pieces clicked together. Kelly's recent hostility, her eager participation in my mother's schemes, the way she'd been poisoning Emma against me. I gathered the papers, my hands steady now. "I need copies of everything." "What are you going to do?" I thought of Emma, 12 years old, and already learning to doubt herself. Of my father, reduced to a shadow in his own home. Of Kelly, transformed into another weapon in my mother's arsenal. "I'm going to that family meeting," I said, "but this time I'm bringing my own evidence." The stack of papers from Dr. Gary's files felt like a grenade in my bag. As I walked into my father's woodworking shop, sawdust hung in the air, carrying memories of childhood afternoons spent watching him work. Now those memories felt tainted. knowing he'd stood by while my mother and Dr. Gary orchestrated their manipulation. My father looked up from his workbench, his glasses fogged with wood particles. Sophie, I didn't expect. Did you know? I placed Dr. Gary's consultation notes on his bench, careful to avoid the fresh varnish on a half-finished cabinet. He picked up the papers, squinting at the dates. His hands trembled slightly, not from age, but recognition. Where did you get these? That's not an answer. The shop's ventilation hummed, filling the silence between us. My father set down his chisel, the metal catching light from the overhead lamp. Your mother was struggling after Emma was born, he said finally. Dr. Gary offered to help. Help? I jabbed my finger at a highlighted section. He taught her how to isolate us, how to make us doubt ourselves. That's not help, that's abuse. You don't understand. Then make me understand. My voice cracked. Because Kelly's spreading rumors about my mental health. Emma barely speaks to me, and somehow I'm the one being called unstable for taking a 3-week trip. My father's shoulders hunched, the same posture he'd adopted during countless family discussions where my mother had torn into me while he watched. There are things you don't know about your mother's past, he started, but his phone buzzed. My mother's name lit up the screen. I grabbed the papers before he could answer. You're still covering for her. Sophie, wait. But I was already walking out, the autumn air sharp in my lungs. My phone chimed with a text from Kelly. Emma's upset, thanks for that. I drove to Emma's middle school. Arriving just as classes let out, my sister emerged from the building, her backpack covered in pins and patches. Small acts of self-expression my mother hadn't managed to suppress yet. Want a ride? I called through the open window. Emma hesitated, glancing at her friends. Mom says I'm not supposed to go anywhere with you right now. Since when do you listen to everything Mom says? A flicker of the old Emma, the one who used to sneak into my room late at night to share secrets, crossed her face. She climbed into the passenger seat. Kelly said you're having some kind of breakdown, she said, as we pulled away from the school. And you believed her? Emma fiddled with her backpack strap. I don't know what to believe anymore. Mom keeps saying you're trying to tear the family apart. But you're the only one who ever asks what I want. I pulled into the ice cream shop where we used to celebrate report cards. What do you want, Emma? She stared at her hands. I want to know why Mom has all these rules about who we can talk to and what we can say. I want to know why Dad never disagrees with her. Her voice dropped. I want to know if we're crazy for questioning it. We're not crazy. I reached into my bag and pulled out an old sketchbook. My childhood drawings, filled with the unfiltered observations of a young girl watching her family's dynamics. I want you to have this. Emma opened the book, her eyes widening at the familiar scenes captured in crayon and colored pencil. Our mother's different faces for different audiences, our father's shrinking presence, the way our family photos never matched our reality. I drew these when I was your age, I said. When I started noticing things didn't add up. A car horn blared outside. Through the window, I saw Kelly's SUV pulling into the parking lot. Mom asked me to pick up Emma, she said, through the open window, her smile sharp as broken promises. We wouldn't want her to be late for her therapy session with Dr. Gary. Emma clutched the sketchbook. You never said anything about therapy. It's just a check-in, Kelly said smoothly. Your mom's concerned about recent influences. I watched my sister slide into Kelly's car, the sketchbook hidden in her backpack. As they drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Wyatt. Found something in Gary's files about your father. You need to see this now. The dinner table stretched before me like a battlefield. My mother had insisted on hosting, claiming we needed to discuss recent concerns as a family. I'd accepted, knowing it was time to plant the first seeds of doubt. Wyatt's latest discovery about my father burned in my mind as I watched my mother arrange the plates with surgical precision. Each fork aligned exactly, each glass positioned just so, her way of maintaining control, even over inanimate objects. Sophie, help me in the kitchen, she commanded, her voice honey-sweet for our audience. I followed her, catching Emma's worried glance as I passed. In the kitchen, my mother pressed a serving dish into my hands. Dr. Gary tells me Emma's been asking unusual questions, she said, adjusting the garnish, about our family dynamics. Maybe she's developing critical thinking skills. My mother's hands stilled. I know you gave her something. A book? Just some old drawings. Art therapy was a mistake, she murmured, more to herself than me. It made you too observant. Kelly burst through the kitchen door, her timing too perfect to be coincidental. Emma's crying in the bathroom, something about not wanting to see Dr. Gary anymore. My mother's mask slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing something raw underneath. Fear, maybe, or recognition. I'll talk to her, I said. But Kelly blocked my path. Haven't you done enough? The serving dish grew heavy in my hands. Like you did enough when you told everyone I was having a breakdown. Girls, my mother's voice carried that familiar warning tone. Emma needs stability right now. Sophie, your accusations aren't helping. They're not accusations when I have proof. I set down the dish. Did you know Dr. Gary's been treating Kelly for years? Without disclosing his connection to our family. Kelly's face paled. My mother's fingers twitched toward her neck, a tell I'd noticed in childhood, signaling when her control was slipping. That's confidential information, Kelly snapped. Like the information he's been feeding my mother about all of us. A crash from the dining room interrupted us. We rushed out to find Emma standing over a shattered water glass, my father frozen in his chair. I don't want to go to therapy, Emma announced, her voice shaking. I saw the notes in Sophie's sketchbook about how Dr. Gary helps Mom control us. My mother recovered first. Sweetheart, those drawings are just Sophie's interpretation. She's always had an active imagination. Stop lying. Emma's words cut through the room. I found more notes. In your study. The silence that followed felt electric. My mother's perfect posture cracked slightly. Kelly, she said, take Emma upstairs. No. Emma backed away. I want to know why there are instructions about how to make us doubt ourselves. Why there are strategies for isolating us from friends. Kelly moved toward Emma, but stopped when she saw what my sister held. A familiar manila folder. Where did you get that? Kelly's voice had lost its accusatory edge. Your car. When you took me to Dr. Gary's office. Emma opened the folder. There are notes about you too, Kelly. About how to keep you angry at Sophie. My mother took a step forward. Emma, you don't understand. I understand enough. Emma's hand trembled as she pulled out a paper, like this note about Dad. About something that happened before I was born? My father stood so quickly, his chair toppled. Madeline, don't. They need to know, Kelly said suddenly. Everyone turned to her. I found out last week about what really happened with Sophie's college fund, about why Dr. Gary has so much power over this family. My mother's mask shattered completely. Kelly, remember what we discussed? I remember everything, Kelly said, including what you told me about Sophie's real father. The room tilted. My father made a sound like he'd been struck. Emma dropped the folder, papers scattering across the floor like autumn leaves. My phone buzzed, Wyatt, probably with more revelations from Dr. Gary's files, but I couldn't look away from my mother's face, watching as decades of careful manipulation began to unravel. Well, my mother said, smoothing her napkin with trembling hands, I suppose we should all sit down. There are some things you need to understand about our family's history. Emma moved to stand beside me, her small hand finding mine under the table. Whatever truth was coming, we'd face it together. The truth about my father, or rather, the man I'd thought was my father, lay between us like shattered glass. 3 days had passed since the dinner revelation, and I sat across from Kelly in a quiet corner of her apartment, watching her hands shake as she opened her laptop. Your mother's been moving money for years, she said, turning the screen toward me. Look at these transfers. The spreadsheet showed a pattern. Regular payments from a trust fund I'd never known existed, all flowing into offshore accounts. My college fund. Kelly nodded. And Emma's. But that's not the worst part. She clicked another tab. Dr. Gary's been getting monthly payments too, far more than his usual therapy fees. Blackmail, insurance. Kelly's voice had lost its usual edge. He knows everything about everyone, including what happened between your mother and your biological father. My phone buzzed, Emma asking where I was. I ignored it, focusing on the numbers that represented years of stolen opportunities. Why are you showing me this? I asked Kelly. Why now? She closed the laptop. Because I found out what she did to my mother, her own sister. Why my mom really left town 15 years ago. Her fingers traced the laptop's edge. Your mother didn't just manipulate us, Sophie. She destroyed anyone who threatened her control. A knock at the door made us both jump. Through the peephole, I saw my father, Ryan, standing in the hallway. He's been trying to reach you, Kelly said. I opened the door but stayed in the threshold. Ryan looked older than he had at dinner, grief etching new lines around his eyes. I should have told you years ago, he said. Which part? That you're not my father, or that you helped my mother steal my future? I thought I was protecting you. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. From this. Inside was a photograph. My mother, 29 years younger, with a man whose features matched my own. They stood in front of a familiar building. Dr. Gary's office, I said. Ryan nodded. Your biological father was his colleague. When your mother ended things, he threatened to expose their affair. Gary offered to help manage the situation. By manipulating everyone for the next 3 decades. By keeping the family together. His voice cracked. I loved you like my own, Sophie. I still do. Love doesn't stand by while someone destroys their child. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Wyatt. Emergency, your mother's at Emma's school. Cold fear gripped my chest. What's she doing there? Pulling her out, Kelly said, reading a message on her own phone. Enrolling her in some private boarding school upstate. She can't. She can, Ryan interrupted. She got emergency custody yesterday. Claimed you and Kelly were emotionally manipulating Emma. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so terrifying. I grabbed my keys. Where's Dr. Gary's office? I demanded. Sophie, don't, Ryan started. He has proof, doesn't he, of everything. That's why my mother keeps paying him. Kelly stood. I'm coming with you. No, I faced her. I need you to get those financial records to Wyatt. All of them. And Ryan. I met his eyes. If you want to start making things right, you'll go to Emma's school and stall them. The drive to Dr. Gary's office passed in a blur. I thought of Emma's face at dinner, her small hand in mine, as our mother's lies unraveled. I wouldn't let her become another casualty of this twisted game. Dr. Gary's receptionist was gone. Convenient. I found him in his office, calmly shredding documents. I wondered when you'd show up, he said without looking up. Where are the original files? Your mother already collected them. He finally met my gaze. She's quite thorough when she feels threatened. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Emma. Mom says I'm sick like you, that I need special treatment. Please don't let her send me away. I looked at Dr. Gary, still feeding paper into the shredder, and made my decision. Sometimes, I realized, the only way to fight manipulation was to become the better manipulator. How much? I asked. To tell me everything? Dr. Gary's price was steeper than I expected. Not in money, but in truth. He sat across from me, a recorder between us. His smile carrying the practiced warmth of a career manipulator. Your mother wasn't always like this, he said, pressing record. She came to me 28 years ago, desperate to hide her own mother's institutionalization. Mental illness can be hereditary. The implication hung in the air like poison. My phone buzzed again. Wyatt, warning that my mother was heading to Dr. Gary's office. We had minutes. At most. The files, I pressed. Where are they? In a safety deposit box. Insurance against your mother's instability. He leaned forward. But I'm more interested in what you'll do with them. You're becoming quite the manipulator yourself. A car door slammed outside. Through the window, I saw my mother's silhouette approaching the building. The key, I demanded. Now. First, tell me, have you experienced any episodes, blackouts, moments of lost time? The office door burst open. My mother stood there, Emma behind her, tears streaking my sister's face. I knew you'd try something like this, my mother said. Always so predictable, Sophie. Like sending Emma to boarding school. That's your solution. It's treatment. My mother's voice carried that familiar, reasonable tone that had gaslighted us for years. The same treatment that helped me at her age. The pieces clicked together. You were institutionalized, too. Your grandmother's genetics, Dr. Gary interjected smoothly. The family curse, one might say. Emma tried to move toward me, but our mother's grip on her shoulder tightened. Tell her, mother, I said. Tell Emma how you're recreating your own trauma, how you're turning into the monster you feared. I'm protecting her. The mask slipped, revealing something desperate underneath. From becoming like you? Kelly appeared in the doorway, holding a manila envelope. I have the trust fund documents and the records from your mother's institutionalization, Madeline, the real ones. My mother's face drained of color. Where did you? Your sister, my mother, kept copies. Insurance, she called it. Before you drove her away. Emma twisted free, running to my side. I pulled her close, feeling her trembling. You're not protecting anyone, I said. You're perpetuating a cycle of abuse, and it ends now. You don't understand what it's like. My mother's composure shattered completely. The voices, the fears, the constant need to control everything before it controls you. I understand perfectly. I met Dr. Gary's gaze because you hired a therapist who specialized in making us feel as crazy as you did. Dr. Gary stood, reaching for his desk drawer, but Kelly was faster. She grabbed a folder from inside. More documents, more secrets. Your license is suspended, she told him. Has been for 5 years. The medical board would be very interested in knowing you've been practicing illegally. You planned this, my mother whispered. All of it. I learned from the best. I took Emma's hand. The difference is, I'm using it to break the cycle, not perpetuate it. The office door opened again. Ryan stood there with Wyatt, both holding papers of their own. The emergency custody order is void, Ryan said. The judge revoked it when he learned about the fraudulent therapy credentials. My mother sank into a chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. For the first time, I saw her clearly, not as the monster of my childhood, but as someone broken who'd tried to fix herself by breaking others. Emma stays with me, I said, and you get real help. Actual therapy, with a licensed professional. Those are the terms. Or what? Or everything comes out. The fraud, the manipulation, the stolen money. All of it. Dr. Gary moved toward the door, but Wyatt blocked his path. You're not going anywhere. Emma squeezed my hand. Is Mom really sick? Yes, I said, watching our mother's face crumple. But that doesn't make what she did right. What happens now? Emma asked. I looked at our mother, seeing not the powerful manipulator of my nightmares, but a frightened woman who'd spent decades building walls to hide her own trauma. Now, I said, we all start healing the right way. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Emma's discharge papers. My mother's final move had been calculated, brutal, and effective. A domestic violence accusation against me, complete with fabricated evidence. The charges are temporary, Wyatt said, watching me sign the forms. We'll fight this, but we both knew the damage was done. Emma had been returned to our mother's custody, and my restraining order meant I couldn't come within 100 feet of either of them. She planned this, I said, my voice hollow. All that breakdown in Gary's office, it was an act. Not entirely. Kelly appeared in the doorway, her face tight with worry. Your mother's been admitted to the psychiatric ward. Voluntary commitment. Voluntary, I laughed. The sound sharp enough to make the desk sergeant glance up. She's playing the mental health card to gain sympathy with the court. Maybe, Kelly sat beside me, but I found something else. Records of her previous hospitalization, when she was 17. It's worse than we thought. The folder she handed me contained psychiatric evaluations spanning 3 decades. Each page revealed a deeper pattern of manipulation, delusion, and calculated control. My phone lit up with a text from Ryan. "Emma's asking for you. Em won't let her have her phone." I should have seen this coming, I said, closing the folder. She's using the system against me, just like she used Dr. Gary. Speaking of Gary, Wyatt said, he's disappeared. Cleaned out his office last night. Of course he had. The one person who could verify my mother's manipulation had vanished, taking his evidence with him. A new text arrived, an unknown number, but I recognized Emma's way of writing. "Mom's different now, scary different. The doctors give her pills, but they make her worse. She's hurting Emma to hurt me," I said, standing. You need to stay away," Kelly interrupted. "That's what she wants. For you to violate the restraining order. Give her real evidence against you." The station door opened, and Ryan walked in. He looked older than he had in Gary's office, grief etching deeper lines around his eyes. "I've been going through old papers," he said. "Found these in the attic." He handed me a stack of yellowed envelopes, letters between my mother and her own mother, dating back to before I was born. "Your grandmother didn't have mental illness," Ryan said quietly. "Your mother fabricated that story to justify her own behavior, to make us all believe it was genetic, inevitable." The realization hit like a physical blow. She made me think I was going crazy, made Emma think she was at risk. "It's what she does," Kelly said. "Creates problems so she can position herself as the solution." Another text from Emma's secret number. "The new doctor asks lots of questions about you, about what you did to Mom. But I remember the truth." My hand shook as I read the message to the others. "She's turning my sister against me," I said. "And I can't even defend myself." "Maybe you don't have to." Wyatt pulled out his laptop. "Look at this." He showed us security footage from Gary's office, not just from our confrontation, but from years of sessions, hundreds of hours documenting my mother's manipulation, Gary's complicity, the systematic destruction of our family's trust. "Where did you get this?" "Gary's assistant." Turns out she's been collecting evidence for months, waiting for someone to finally stand up to them. Hope flickered, then died, as my phone buzzed with an email from my mother's lawyer. Photos, doctored to show bruises on Emma's arms, time-stamped to match my last visit. "She's thought of everything," I whispered. Ryan took the phone from my trembling hands. "Not everything. She forgot about me." "What do you mean?" "I was there every time she crafted a narrative, built a case, destroyed someone's credibility. I watched, I enabled, and..." He straightened his shoulders. "I documented every manipulation, every lie, every scheme. I thought I was protecting the family by staying quiet. Now it's time to protect it by speaking up." The station's clock ticked past midnight. Somewhere across town, my mother sat in a psychiatric ward, weaving her newest web of deception. Emma lay in her bed, surrounded by manufactured evidence of my supposed violence. And I sat in a police station, realizing that saving my sister might mean destroying what remained of our family forever. "Okay," I said, looking at the faces around me. "Tell me everything." The psychiatric ward's visiting hours sign mocked me as I walked past it. Thanks to Ryan's testimony and Gary's assistant's evidence, the restraining order had been lifted. But this confrontation felt more dangerous than any legal battle. My mother sat in the common room, perfectly poised, despite her hospital gown. Her hair was styled, her posture exact, maintaining control even here. "I wondered when you'd come," she said, not looking up from her puzzle. "Emma misses you." "Stop." I placed Ryan's documentation on the table between us. "No more manipulation, no more games." She examined a puzzle piece. "The new doctor says I'm making excellent progress, acknowledging my trauma, processing my grief." "Your fictional trauma." I spread out the letters from her mother, my grandmother. The mental illness you invented to justify destroying everyone around you. Finally, she looked up. Something flickered behind her eyes. Not guilt or shame, but calculation. You don't understand what it's like, she began. But I cut her off. To feel powerless, to question your own sanity. Actually, I do. You made sure of that. The door opened. Kelly entered with Emma, who carried a familiar sketchbook. My childhood drawings. My mother's fingers tightened on her puzzle piece. Emma shouldn't be here. Emma needs to be here, Kelly said. She needs to understand what you did to her sister, what you were planning to do to her. Emma opened the sketchbook. I found more drawings, Mom, in the attic. Sophie wasn't crazy. She was documenting everything. Sweetheart, my mother's voice carried that dangerous sweetness. You know your sister isn't well. Stop lying. Emma's voice shook, but held firm. I recorded our sessions with Dr. Gary. The ones where you told him to convince me I was sick like Sophie. The puzzle piece snapped in my mother's hand. Everything you did, I said quietly. Every person you destroyed. It was all based on a lie. You weren't protecting us from inherited mental illness. You were protecting your need for control. You have no idea what protection looks like. My mother stood, her hospital gown suddenly seeming more like armor. Every decision, every action was to keep this family in line. Kelly stepped forward. Like you kept my mother in line? Before you drove her away with your lies. A nurse appeared in the doorway, watching. My mother noticed too. Her audience was growing. I did what I had to do, she said, her voice rising theatrically. You're all so quick to judge. But who held this family together? Who sacrificed everything to maintain order? Order, I laughed. You mean control. And you didn't sacrifice anything. You stole our futures, our trust funds, our ability to trust ourselves. You're proving my point, she snapped. Listen to yourself. So paranoid, so accusatory. Just like your father. My real father? I stepped closer. The one you erased from my life. Or Ryan, the man you manipulated into enabling your abuse. Emma moved to my side, holding out a final piece of evidence, her own journal. I wrote down everything, Mom. Everything you said when you thought no one was listening. Everything you planned for my treatment. My mother's mask cracked, not in defeat, but in fury. You ungrateful, manipulative, careful, Kelly warned. The nurses are watching, and unlike Dr. Gary, they're actually licensed professionals. The common room had gone silent. Other patients and staff stood witness to the unraveling of my mother's carefully constructed narrative. What do you want? My mother hissed. Money? Control? Recognition of your imagined trauma? I want you to get real help, I said. Not more manipulation, not more lies. Actual therapy for your actual issues. And I want you to stay away from Emma until you do. You can't. The court can, Kelly interrupted. Ryan's testimony, Gary's records, Emma's journals. It's over, Aunt Madeline. The only question is whether you'll face it voluntarily or have it forced on you. My mother sank back into her chair, her puzzle scattered around her like pieces of her broken control. Emma needs her mother, she whispered, trying one last manipulation. Emma needs the truth, I corrected. And for the first time in her life, she's getting it. The nurse stepped forward, signaling the end of visiting hours. As we turned to leave, my mother called out, Sophie. I paused, but didn't turn. I did love you, she said, in my way. I know, I replied. That's what makes it worse. The court order arrived on a Tuesday, granting me full custody of Emma. I placed it in my growing collection of documents. Proof that truth, when finally unleashed, has its own gravity. Emma sat at my kitchen counter, homework spread before her, occasionally glancing at her phone. Our mother's weekly supervised calls were scheduled and structured now, monitored by her new therapist, a real one this time. She asked about you again, Emma said, not looking up from her math problems. Said she's been writing letters. The letters sat unopened in my desk drawer, each envelope bearing the psychiatric facility's return address. 37 so far, one for each day since the court hearing. Kelly appeared in the doorway, carrying a box of old photos. Found these at Ryan's house. Thought you might want to see them before we sort through everything. The photos showed our family's carefully constructed facade, perfectly posed holiday gatherings, meticulously documented achievements, manufactured moments of harmony. But now I could see the tension in every smile, the fear behind each staged scene. Dr. Gary's replacement called, Kelly said, sitting beside Emma. They're building a case against him. Found 6 other families he helped manipulate. 7, I corrected, thinking of the message I'd received yesterday. His assistant found another one. Emma pushed aside her homework. Do you think Mom really believes her own lies? I think she believed in her version of protection, I said, choosing my words carefully. But believing something doesn't make it true. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. Found more financial records. M had accounts we never knew about. Want to see them? I typed back, no, give them to the lawyers. Some truths didn't need my witness anymore. Some battles could be fought by others. Wyatt's here, Kelly announced, glancing through the window. He carried a familiar manila envelope, the last of Gary's files, recovered from his abandoned office. Don't, I said, when he tried to hand them to me. I don't need to know everything anymore. Emma looked up from her phone. Mom's therapist says she's making progress, real progress this time. The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility and doubt. I thought of my mother's last letter, still sealed. When you're ready to understand. You don't have to read them, Kelly said, watching me eye the drawer where I kept the letters. No one would blame you for burning them all. I know. I pulled out the latest envelope, turning it over in my hands. But maybe understanding isn't the same as forgiving. Emma slid off her stool and hugged me. Not the desperate embrace of a scared child, but the conscious choice of someone learning to trust her own judgment. We're going to be okay, she said. Different, but okay. Kelly gathered the photos, pausing at one from years ago. All of us at a family picnic. My mother's hand gripping my shoulder just a little too tight. What should we do with these? She asked. Keep them, I said, as reminders, not of what was, but of what we'll never allow again. Wyatt set Gary's files on the counter. The police found him, by the way, in Mexico. He's being extradited next week. Another piece settling into place, another thread of the old pattern being rewoven into something new. Emma returned to her homework, but not before placing one photo in front of me. A candid shot I'd never seen before. In it, my mother stood alone in our old backyard, looking lost in a way she'd never allowed anyone to capture. Maybe that's who she really was, Emma suggested, before she decided to become someone else's nightmare. I studied the image, seeing not the monster of my childhood or the patient in the psychiatric facility, but something more complex, a woman who'd twisted protection into poison, love into control. Maybe, I agreed, placing the photo face down, but we get to decide who we become now. The afternoon light stretched across my kitchen counter, touching the court orders, the old photos, the unopened letters, artifacts of a battle fought not with weapons, but with truth. Outside, the world continued its steady spin, indifferent to our small victory over inherited darkness. Emma looked up from her homework. Sophie, I'm glad we chose truth. Me too, I said, and for the first time in years, the words held no hidden meaning, no subtle manipulation, no secret pain. They were simply, finally, true.
My name's Elise, and my story isn't one of those fairy tales you're used to hearing. My dad was the king of his castle, and we were just living in it. My mom, she was more like the silent enforcer, backing up every one of Dad's rules with a nod and a look that could freeze you in place. Then there was my sister, Anna. She was older by a couple of years and had always been the rebel, trying to push the boundaries, but even she couldn't break the iron will of our father. Our home life? It was a series of do's and don'ts. Don't talk back. Do as you're told. Don't stay out late. Do your chores. The list went on and on. It wasn't just the rules, it was the cold way they were enforced. Love and warmth were scarce, replaced by a rigid discipline that stifled us. One day, Anna got caught up in a teenage dream. She met a guy, Dave, kind-hearted and with a smile that could light up the darkest days. But he made the mistake of not fitting into Dad's view of suitable. I remember the day she brought him over, all nervous and hopeful. The air was thick with tension. Dad took one look at him and the sparks flew. "What do you think you're doing, bringing this, nobody into my house?" he barked, voice booming like thunder. Anna's eyes were wide, tears brimming, but she didn't dare let them fall. She knew better than to challenge Dad openly. "Dad, please, he's a good person," she whispered, barely audible. "Good? Good doesn't pay the bills. Get him out of my sight," he spat, turning his back on them both. That night, Anna cried in silence, her dreams shattered. She didn't dare disobey Dad, and that was the end of her and Dave. It was a lesson in our harsh reality. Love wasn't about feelings, it was about fitting into the strict mold Dad had set. As for me, I watched and learned. I knew better than to get caught in the crossfire. I kept my head down, followed the rules, and counted down the days until I could escape. The day I left for college felt like my first breath of fresh air in years. The day I left for college felt like I was finally taking a sledgehammer to the chains that had bound me my whole life. My bags were packed, and I was ready to bolt out the door, but not without one last showdown with the warden, my dad. "Elise, you think you're ready for the big world out there?" Dad's voice was like gravel, tough and unyielding. He stood in the doorway, a towering figure that I was about to leave behind. "I'm more than ready, Dad. I've been ready," I shot back, my voice stronger than I felt. Inside, my stomach was doing flips, but there was no way I'd let him see that. Mom was in the background, wringing her hands, the eternal peacemaker. "Be safe, dear. Remember to call us, every day," she said, her voice trailing off as if she already knew the impossibility of her request. College was a blur of new experiences, late nights, and the kind of freedom that was intoxicating. I made friends, actual friends, who liked me for me, not because of some unspoken family obligation. One night, in our cramped little dorm, my roommate, Jess, and I were sprawled out on our beds, talking about everything and nothing at the same time. "So, Elise, you ever gonna call your folks? You've been here a month, and I haven't seen you pick up the phone once," Jess asked, her tone casual, but probing. I sighed, staring at the ceiling as if it held the answers. "I talk to my mom now and then. But every call feels like a leash tightening around my neck. It's always, 'Are you eating well? Are you studying hard? Remember who you are.'" Jess laughed, a light, easy sound. "Sounds like my mom, but on steroids. They're just worried about you, you know? It's a big world out here." The college life was turning into everything I hoped it'd be, a stark contrast to the suffocating grip of my parents' house. I was finally feeling the weight lift off my shoulders, getting used to the idea of living on my own terms. Then, out of nowhere, my bubble burst when my mom decided to drop a surprise visit. I was in the middle of a laugh with Jess when there was a knock on our door. The last person I expected to see on the other side was my mother, standing there with a look that could sour milk. "Elise, what is this place? It's so small," she said, her nose wrinkling as she stepped inside, eyeing Jess like she was some sort of street urchin. Jess, ever the brave soul, extended her hand. "Hi, Mrs. Martin, I'm Jess. Elise's roommate." Mom looked at Jess's hand like it was covered in dirt, but shook it anyway. "Jess, is it? Elise, can I have a word with you, in private?" The way she said "in private" made it sound like we were about to discuss state secrets, instead of whatever she had on her mind. Once we were alone, she wasted no time. "Elise, that girl, she's not the right sort of friend for you. She's vulgar," she hissed, her voice laced with disdain. I felt my cheeks burning, a mix of anger and embarrassment stewing inside me. "Mom, Jess is a great person. She's been nothing but kind to me. Ignoring me, Mom began rifling through my closet, her hands moving from one piece of clothing to another with a speed born of disapproval. And these clothes? They're far too revealing. What on earth are you thinking, wearing things like this? Each word felt like a slap, stripping away the independence I'd started to build. I wanted to scream, to tell her to stop, but the words wouldn't come. All I could do was stand there, silently fuming and fighting back tears. After what felt like an eternity, Mom left, leaving a trail of silence in her wake. I collapsed on the bed, the dam finally breaking as tears streamed down my face. Jess came in soon after, sitting beside me without a word. She handed me a tissue and waited for the storm to pass. "Elise, screw what your mom thinks, okay? You're awesome, and if wearing a tank top is the biggest of your sins, then you're practically a saint," Jess said, her voice a mix of anger and comfort. "You're your own person, Elise. Don't forget that." Her words, simple and straightforward, were like a beacon in the fog. Jess was right. I was my own person, and it was high time I started living like one. After college, I landed a job in a big company known for its semi-finished meat products. The boss, Michael, was this young guy, grandson of the founder. Kind of hot, if I'm being honest, but in a "I've got my life together" kind of way, which was intimidating and attractive all at once. One day, he called me into his office. My heart was racing, thinking I'd messed up a report or something. "Elise, can you come in here for a second?" His voice was calm but carried across the sales floor like he was announcing the next big product launch. I walked in, trying to look confident but probably failing miserably. "Yes, Michael?" He was leaning back in his chair, reports scattered across his desk. "I've been reviewing your work. You've got an eye for detail. Impressive," he said, his eyes not leaving the papers. I didn't know where to look. Was this a compliment or the prelude to a "but"? "Thank you, I try my best," I managed to say, feeling my face heat up. "No, thank you. It's refreshing to see someone take their work seriously around here. Keep it up," he said, finally looking up with a smile that made my knees weak. Fast forward a few months, Michael got transferred to another department. We barely saw each other, which was probably for the best. I mean, dating your boss? That's a recipe for disaster, right? Then, as fate would have it, we bumped into each other at the supermarket. I was inspecting some sad-looking avocados when I heard his voice. "Finding anything good?" I turned around, and there he was, casually dressed, which was a stark contrast to the suits I was used to seeing him in. "Michael. Hi. Just, trying to decide if these avocados are worth it," I stammered, feeling like a complete idiot. He laughed, a sound that was way too charming. "Let me give you a tip. This one," he picked up an avocado, "is perfect. See? Firm, but not too hard." We ended up talking more about fruits and vegetables than I ever thought possible. One thing led to another, and we found ourselves having dinner together. It was casual, easy conversation that felt like we were just two people getting to know each other, not an employee and her boss. After that night, things changed. We started seeing each other outside of work, keeping it on the down low, of course. It was nice, comfortable. But I couldn't shake off the fear of what my parents would think, so I kept it a secret from them. A year flew by with Michael, each day feeling like a step further away from my old life and closer to something that was entirely ours. One chilly evening in November, Michael took me out for what I thought was just another date night. We ended up at this quaint little spot downtown that had the best view of the city. It was more romantic than our usual hangouts, and I should have guessed something was up. As we sat there, looking over the city lights, he got all serious, which wasn't like him. "Elise, these past months with you have been incredible. You've shown me what it really means to be in love," he started, his voice steady, but I could tell he was nervous. I was caught off guard. "Michael, what's going on?" My heart started racing, not sure what to expect. He took a deep breath, reached into his pocket, and before I knew it, he was down on one knee, holding the most beautiful ring I'd ever seen. "Elise, will you marry me?" My heart stopped. This was it, the moment I'd dreamed about but never really thought would happen, at least not under these circumstances. "Yes, Michael, a million times yes," I managed to say, tears of joy blurring my vision. The euphoria of our engagement was overwhelming, but it was short-lived. The thought of telling my parents loomed over us like a dark cloud. I knew I couldn't keep this a secret forever. The fear of their reaction was paralyzing, but Michael was supportive, encouraging even. "We should tell them, Elise. It's the right thing to do," he said one night as we were discussing, more like avoiding, the subject. The day we decided to tell my parents, my stomach was in knots. We drove to their house, the silence in the car heavy with unsaid fears and unasked questions. Sitting across from my parents in the living room felt like being in a courtroom, waiting for the judge's final verdict. "Mom, Dad, we have something to tell you. Michael and we're engaged," I blurted out, not trusting myself to build up to it gently. First, there was shock, then a frosty sort of acceptance once they learned Michael wasn't just some guy, but a guy with a hefty bank account. The real drama unfolded when Mom started laying out her grand plan for the wedding. "We need to have it in the church, with all the trimmings. It'll be magnificent," she said, her eyes already picturing the event. I could feel my dream of a simple, intimate wedding slipping through my fingers. Mom, Michael and I were thinking something low-key. Just sign the papers and have a small party. "That's it," I said, hoping to steer her away from her grand designs. Her reaction was as if I'd suggested we get married in a fast food joint. "Unacceptable. A girl's wedding day is her most special day. I'll take care of everything. Don't you worry," she said, dismissing my wishes with a wave of her hand. I felt my temper flare. "But it's our wedding, shouldn't we get to decide how we want it?" I protested, but Dad cut me off mid-sentence. "If you don't do it this way, you might as well not do it at all. No blessing from us," he said, his tone final, leaving no room for argument. Michael had been quiet up till now, trying to keep the peace. But even he seemed to falter under the weight of their expectations. "Maybe we should just go along with it, Elise," he whispered to me, a hint of defeat in his voice. I couldn't believe my ears. Betrayal stung me, sharp and unexpected, from the man I'd just agreed to marry. My parents, seeing his compliance, practically beamed with victory. The ride back from their place was heavy with my disappointment. But as soon as we were alone, Michael took my hands in his. "Listen, Elise, I only said that to calm things down. We're not doing it their way. We're doing it our way, okay? Let them think what they want for now," he said, his voice firm, his eyes telling me he meant every word. I was in the middle of discussing cake flavors over the phone with Michael when the doorbell rang. The moment I opened the box, my heart sank. It was for me, a wedding dress. But not just any dress. It was the epitome of what I never wanted in a wedding gown. Layers upon layers of tulle, a bodice that looked more like armor, and a train that seemed long enough to cover a football field. It was horrendous. Staring in disbelief, I called Michael back, panic edging my voice. "You won't believe this. My mom sent over a wedding dress. It's like a cake topper from the 80s got turned into a dress." Michael's laugh did little to soothe my rising hysteria. "Maybe it's not that bad? Try it on?" "Try it on? Michael, this thing has its own zip code. It's a disaster," I shot back, the image of me drowning in layers of lace burning in my mind. Before I could spiral further, I decided to confront my mom. Dialing with trembling fingers, I braced myself for the inevitable showdown. "Mom, why did you send me a wedding dress? We talked about this. Michael and I are doing things our way," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause on the other end, and then, "Elise, darling, that dress is a masterpiece. It's what every girl dreams of. You'll thank me." "A masterpiece? Mom, it's not me. It's not us. We want simple, remember?" My patience was thinning, each word a struggle to maintain civility. Simple is for table settings, not weddings. You'll wear it, and you'll look beautiful, she retorted, her voice leaving no room for argument. Elise, listen to me. Your father and I have already taken care of everything. The hall is booked, and plans are set. You're going to have the wedding every girl dreams of. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. What do you mean, everything's set? Michael and I haven't agreed to any of this. I could feel my voice rising, a mix of anger and disbelief swirling inside me. It's done, Elise. We've even sent out the guest list. It's going to be a beautiful event, she said, her tone final, cutting off any avenue for protest. I hung up, feeling defeated and betrayed. It felt like I was being steamrolled into someone else's version of my wedding. When I relayed the conversation to Michael, his face fell. Yeah, your mom called me. She insisted I cover half of the budget she's drawn up. Sent me the bill, the hall address, and some wedding design proposal, he admitted, looking like he'd swallowed something sour. And the guest list, she sent that to you too? I asked, dreading the answer. Michael nodded. Yeah, it's packed with people I've never met. And I didn't see any of your relatives on it. Your mom mentioned something about keeping it exclusive. The realization that my parents were orchestrating a wedding that catered to their social circle, sidelining our wishes, and even my own family, was too much. Tears streamed down my face as the enormity of their manipulation sank in. Seeing me crumble, Michael wrapped his arms around me. Hey, we're not going to let this happen. We'll have our wedding, our way. Just us, our friends, and whoever we want. No dictates, no lists. Let's do it secretly, the way we want. I needed an ally, someone who could understand the madness of defying our parents on such a grand scale. Naturally, my thoughts turned to Anna, my sister, the one person who'd always understood the weight of our parents' expectations. So, I called her up, heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. Anna, I need you to be super chill about what I'm about to tell you. Michael and we're planning a do-over. A real wedding that's all about us, no parental strings attached. I spilled, the words tumbling out in a rush. Her response was immediate, a mix of shock and awe. Holy smokes, Elise. That's huge. I'm in. What do you need from me? Relief washed over me. We're thinking something simple, outdoors. Just love, laughter, and the people who really matter. No drama, no spectacle. Can you help keep the lid on this? It's top secret. Consider it locked down. I'm so proud of you, Elise. It's about time you took your life back from them, Anna said, her voice brimming with excitement and a touch of mischief. With Anna's help, we started planning in earnest. Invitations went out, with a clear, almost spy-like message. This is a covert operation. Do not, under any circumstances, let the rents know. Our friends and family were in. The buzz of excitement was palpable, a shared secret that bound us all together in a way I'd never experienced before. Then came the call from Aunt Clara, a relative I hadn't expected to hear from. Elise, darling, I got your invitation. Your mother hasn't stopped going on about some lavish affair, but I knew something was up. You're doing the right thing, love. Don't worry, my lips are sealed. Heaven knows she didn't want me at her version of your wedding anyway. Said I didn't fit the guest list aesthetic. Her words, so full of support and understanding, bolstered my resolve. This was more than a wedding, it was a statement, a reclaiming of our choices, our voices. The week leading up to the official wedding, my parents' version, was a masterclass in acting. Michael and I went through the motions, nodding along to plans, tasting cakes that tasted like cardboard, and smiling through gritted teeth. It was a performance worthy of an award, but our eyes were on the prize. Then, on a day not our wedding, as not our guests gathered at some impersonal hall, Michael and I were boarding a plane to Bali, our hearts light, free from the weight of expectations. Bali was everything we wanted, intimate, breathtakingly beautiful, and so us. We exchanged vows near a waterfall, the sound of rushing water a perfect backdrop to our promises of forever. After our secret wedding in Bali, the reality of facing the fallout with my parents was a cloud hanging over our return. I knew the storm was brewing, it was only a matter of time before it broke. The first call came from Anna, who was both excited and nervous for us. "You guys back yet? The hurricane's about to hit land here," she said, her voice a mix of amusement and concern. "Yeah, we just landed. How bad is it?" I braced myself for the impact, clutching the phone like a lifeline. "Mom and Dad are on the warpath. They found out about Bali when they tried calling you to berate you for being late to your own wedding. When they realized where you were, all hell broke loose," Anna explained, the words tumbling out in a hurried whisper. Dialing my parents' number felt like the longest few seconds of my life. The phone rang twice before my mom's voice came through, icy and sharp. "Elise, where do you think you've been? Do you have any idea of the embarrassment you've caused us?" "Mom, I'm sorry you feel embarrassed, but this was about what Michael and I wanted. We needed our wedding to be true to us, not a spectacle," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Dad thinks we should cut you off, you know. After this stunt, maybe he's right," she added, the threat hanging in the air like a guillotine. The anger in her words was palpable, but so was the conviction in my response. "If that's what you think is best, then so be it. But Michael and I made a choice for our happiness. I wish you could be happy for us." The line went dead, her silence a clear indication of the breach that had formed between us. The aftermath was a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that Michael and I had followed our hearts, but sorrow for the rift that now lay between my family and me. As the day of our real celebration drew closer, a gnawing worry kept me up at night, the fear of my parents crashing the party, hell-bent on making a scene. Michael, ever the rock, saw the turmoil I was in and came up with a solution. "Let's get some security. Keep the drama at the gate. This day's about us, not them," he said, his decision firm, leaving no room for argument. The day of the party was nothing short of magical. We chose a minimalist outdoor style for the celebration, with simple, elegant decorations that complemented the natural beauty around us. As dusk fell, electric garlands lit up the venue, casting a warm glow over the faces of our friends and relatives. It was like something out of a dream. Standing beside Michael, both of us dressed to the nines, I felt a surge of happiness so intense it was almost overwhelming. Our guests came up to us, one by one, showering us with congratulations and warm wishes. Anna was beaming, her happiness for us clear as day, while Aunt Clara, bless her heart, kept me in a tight hug before pulling me into every dance. The night was perfect, a true celebration of our love and the life we were building together. But then, the inevitable happened. Word got to me through one of the security guys that my parents had shown up, determined to force their way in. My heart sank. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this. Michael squeezed my hand, a silent vow that we'd face this together. I approached the entrance, where my parents stood, arguing with the security. "This is my daughter's wedding. You can't keep me out," my dad bellowed, his face red with anger. "Please, you need to leave. You weren't invited. I made it clear, no drama today," I said, my voice steady though my heart was racing. My mom tried to push past the security, her eyes blazing. "You can't do this to us. We're your parents." But the security held firm, a gentle but unyielding barrier between us and them. "I don't want to have to call the police, but I will if I have to. Please, just go," I said, the finality in my voice surprising even me. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of joy and celebration. Every dance, every laugh, every shared look with Michael reaffirmed my belief that we had made the right choice. We were happy, truly happy, surrounded by the people who mattered most. My first day at the company felt like walking into a storm, not knowing if I'd make it out. The place buzzed with energy, folks rushing about with papers, phones glued to their ears, and the clack of keyboards nonstop. There I was, in my new blazer, trying to blend into the chaos, feeling like a sheep lost in the city. "Hey, you must be the new manager." "I'm Mark, head of the department." "You got a name, or should I just call you Newbie?" A voice cut through the noise, pulling me back to reality. I turned to face him, Mark, the guy I heard so much about. Tall, with a smirk that probably got him in and out of trouble, and eyes sharp as knives. "I'm Julie," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "And I'd prefer Julie over Newbie." He laughed, a deep sound that somehow made the room seem less intimidating. "All right, Julie, let's see if you can keep up. This place waits for no one. You ready to dive in, or you gonna stand there looking scared?" His blunt words stung a bit, but I knew this was the real deal. No sugarcoating, no hand-holding. I was here to make a mark, not to be coddled. "I'm ready. Just show me where to start." Mark's smirk turned into a slight smile, one that said he might have underestimated me. "Come on, then. I'll show you the ropes. But don't expect me to go easy on you. You'll have to earn your keep here." As we walked through the maze of desks and buzzing lights, Mark rattled off names and projects, his words a rapid fire that I struggled to catch. "And another thing, don't expect everyone to play nice. This isn't kindergarten. It's a battlefield. You got the guts for it?" I nodded, feeling the weight of his gaze. "I didn't come here to play. I'm here to work and to win." "Good answer. Let's see if you mean it." Mark led me to my new office, a small space with a window overlooking the city. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, deadlines, and learning curves steep enough to give anyone vertigo. Mark was relentless, always pushing, always demanding more. But behind the tough exterior, I caught glimpses of something else, a teacher, maybe even a friend. "Julie, this report looks like it was written by a 5-year-old. Do it again," Mark would say, tossing the papers on my desk without a second glance. "Or, you're gonna let Johnson talk over you like that? Stand up for your ideas, or they'll walk all over you." It was tough love, the kind that grated but also grew on you. Mark wasn't just teaching me about the job, he was showing me how to survive in a world where you're only as good as your last success. One evening, after the office had emptied and the city lights danced in the darkness, Mark knocked on my office door, a couple of beers in hand. "You did good today, Julie. Didn't think you had it in you to stand up to Johnson like that." I took the beer, our fingers brushing slightly. "Thanks, Mark. Means a lot, coming from you." We sat in silence for a moment, the city's hum a backdrop to our thoughts. "This place can chew you up and spit you out if you're not careful," Mark said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard. "But you, I think you might just make it." "Because of your tough love?" I teased, taking a sip of the beer. He chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Maybe. Or maybe you're just as stubborn and hard-headed as I am." As the weeks turned into months, Mark and I found ourselves tangled in something more complicated than mentorship. Our after-hours chats turned into dinners, and those dinners turned into more. We knew the stakes, office romances were a big no-no, a taboo that could cost us both our jobs. But the heart wants what it wants, doesn't it? "Julie, we're playing with fire here," Mark would whisper, his voice heavy with a mix of desire and caution, after one of our secret meetups. "I know, but I can't help it," I'd respond, my heart racing, feeling the thrill and the danger all at once. "Let's just keep this between us. No one has to know." And so, our secret affair began. We became experts at hiding our feelings in the daylight, saving them for the shadows where we could be ourselves, if only for a moment. The risk made everything more intense, but it was a game of Russian roulette. Every stolen kiss, every whispered promise, was a bullet in the chamber, and we were both playing with the trigger. Life's funny, you know? One minute, you're sneaking around, trying to hide your love like it's some kind of contraband, and the next, you're facing a moment that could change everything. That's exactly how it went down with Mark and me. It was a Thursday evening, the kind of evening that didn't seem special until it suddenly was. We were at my place, a modest apartment that had become our little sanctuary away from the prying eyes of the world. The air was filled with the smell of the spaghetti I had cooked, a simple dish, but Mark swore it was the best he'd ever had. "Julie, you know, this sneaking around is getting old," Mark said out of the blue, his fork pausing mid-air. His voice was casual, but his eyes were anything but. I chuckled, thinking he was about to crack a joke. "What do you suggest, a billboard announcing Mark and Julie's love shack?" He didn't laugh. Instead, he put his fork down and took my hand, his touch sending a familiar thrill up my arm. "I'm serious, Julie. I've been thinking. Why don't we just make this official? Marry me, Julie. Let's stop hiding." The words hit me like a bolt of lightning. Marry him? Was he serious? My heart started racing, and a part of me wanted to say yes, before my brain could catch up. But then, reality kicked in. "Mark, you know we can't. The company." "Screw the company," he cut in, his usual calm replaced with a passion I hadn't seen before. "I love you, and I'm tired of pretending like you're not the most important part of my life. We'll figure it out. We always do." His words, so raw and honest, melted any reservations I had. How could I say no to a man who was willing to risk it all for us? "Yes," I whispered, the word barely making it out, before Mark pulled me into a kiss that sealed our promise. The next day was a whirlwind. We knew we had to face the music and tell our boss about our decision. The company had strict rules about relationships in the workplace, and one of us would have to leave. But at that moment, nothing felt impossible as long as we were together. "Mr. Reynolds, we have something to tell you," Mark started, his hand gripping mine under the table as we sat across from our boss in his imposing office. Mr. Reynolds looked up from his paperwork, his gaze sharp. "I'm listening." Mark squeezed my hand, a silent source of strength, and then laid it all out. "Julie and I are getting married. We know the company's policy, and we're prepared to deal with the consequences." Mr. Reynolds didn't seem surprised. If anything, he looked like a man who had seen it all. "I appreciate your honesty. You know the rules. One of you will have to resign." Mark was quick to lay down how it was going to be, his voice firm, brooking no argument. "It's going to be Julie who resigns. I've got the career and the salary that we need to keep things going strong. She'll stay home, take care of our future." I didn't say anything at first, the weight of his words sinking in. Part of me wanted to argue, to say we should find another way. But then, the resolve in Mark's eyes told me this was the decision he believed was best for us. "All right," I said finally, my voice steady. "If that's what we've decided, then I'll resign." The ride back from Mr. Reynolds' office was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts. Mark kept trying to reassure me, saying it was for the best, but the silence between us spoke volumes. "Julie, you know this is the right move, right? My job's the stable one. It just makes sense," Mark finally said, breaking the silence as we stood at the door of our shared future. I looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt. But all I saw was certainty. "I know, Mark. It's just a big change, that's all. But we'll make it work. We always do." The honeymoon phase in our suburban home didn't last long. At first, it was all laughter and shared dreams, but then the atmosphere started to change, and not for the better. Mark began to show a side of him I hadn't seen before, a side that expected everything to be just so, perfect and without a single flaw. One evening, as I was trying to get dinner ready after spending the day cleaning the house, Mark came home early. The house smelled like the roast I had in the oven, and I thought it would cheer him up. I was wrong. "Julie, what's this?" Mark's voice cut through the quiet of the kitchen, sharp and cold. I turned to see him holding a plate with a slight frown. "It's dinner, Mark. I tried a new recipe I thought you'd like," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice. He took a bite and immediately made a face. "This is what you call dinner? It's bland. Can't you do anything right?" He dumped the plate into the trash with a clatter that made me jump. I felt a sting of tears in my eyes, but I fought them back. "I'm sorry, Mark. I'll make something else," I murmured, turning back to the stove, my hands shaking slightly. "No, forget it. I'm not hungry anymore." His words were a dismissal, and he stormed off to the living room, leaving me alone with my failed dish and a sinking heart. But it didn't stop there. Mark's demands grew by the day. If a shirt wasn't ironed to his liking, it ended up thrown on the floor. If he found a single speck of dust, he'd make a show of wiping it up with his finger and then wave it in front of my face. "What do I keep you around for if you can't even keep the house clean?" he'd say, and each word felt like a slap. One night, he came home late to find me asleep on the couch, waiting up for him. The TV was still on, a low hum in the quiet room. He woke me up, not gently, but by snatching the blanket away. "Why are you sleeping? The house is a mess," he barked, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of disorder. I rubbed my eyes, confused and tired. "Mark, it's 2 a.m. What mess are you talking about?" He didn't answer, just stomped off to our bedroom, leaving me to wonder what I had missed. The next morning, I found a list on the kitchen counter, items he expected to be done by the time he got back. It was like living with a ticking time bomb, never knowing what would set him off next. I tried to talk to him about it one evening, tried to understand where all this was coming from. "Mark, can we talk? It feels like you're always angry with me. What's going on?" He just looked at me, cold and distant. "There's nothing to talk about. I work all day, and I expect to come home to a clean house and a decent meal. Is that too much to ask?" "But I'm trying my best," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Clearly, your best isn't good enough." And with that, he left the room, leaving me standing there, feeling smaller and more alone than ever. My attempts to stand up for myself didn't go unnoticed, but they sure didn't go unpunished either. After one particularly heated argument where I dared suggest a divorce, thinking maybe the threat of it would shake him up, he retaliated in a way I hadn't expected. "You want to play tough, Julie? Fine. Let's see how you manage without access to the bank accounts," Mark spat out, his face twisted in anger. The next day, I found out he wasn't bluffing. My card was declined at the grocery store, leaving me mortified and empty-handed. When I confronted him about it, his response chilled me to the bone. "Learn your place, Julie. You don't threaten me. You need to understand who's in charge here." Stuck in a house with dwindling supplies, I felt my independence slipping away. Mark carried on as usual, unaffected, dining out for lunch and dinner, while I was left to scrounge around for whatever was left in the pantry. Feeling desperate, I broached the topic of divorce again, hoping maybe this time it would bring some sense into him. Surprisingly, it did, but not in the way I expected. "Divorce? Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what that would do to my reputation?" he hissed. Yet, the day after that conversation, Mark did a complete 180. He came home with flowers, something he hadn't done since our early days, and even arranged a romantic dinner at home, just for the two of us. For a moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the turning point. Maybe he realized what he stood to lose. Maybe this was him trying to make amends. But like a mirage, that hope vanished as quickly as it appeared. The gentle, attentive man who brought me flowers was gone, replaced once again by the cold, demanding stranger I'd come to live with. It was a cruel game of emotional whiplash, one that left me more confused and isolated than ever. Mark's parents, bless their hearts, saw none of this. To them, we were the picture-perfect couple, living out a suburban dream. Whenever they came around, I played the part, smiling and nodding, while Mark played the doting husband. But heaven forbid I slip up, show a crack in the facade. The consequences, as Mark liked to remind me, were swift. One night, after his parents left from one of their visits, Mark decided my performance hadn't been up to par. "You could have been a bit more enthusiastic tonight. My parents think we're happy, Julie. Don't ruin that," he said, his tone icy. When I tried to defend myself, to explain that I was doing my best, it only angered him more. Your best? That's your best? Maybe you need a night on the sofa to think about what your best really means. And just like that, I found myself banished from our bedroom, lying on the sofa in the dark, wondering how my life had come to this. Winter hit hard that year, turning the streets into skating rinks overnight. I remember thinking I should be careful as I headed out to the store, but caution wasn't enough to keep me on my feet. I slipped on the ice, felt a sharp pain, and then nothing but the cold seeping through my coat as I lay there, waiting for help. Passers-by were quick to call an ambulance, and I spent the day in a blur of x-rays and doctors telling me I'd broken my leg. By the time they put me in a cast and sent me home, it was already dark. I tried calling Mark from the hospital, tried to tell him what happened, but all I got was his voicemail. So, I sent him a message and hoped he'd understand. The taxi dropped me off at our house, and I hobbled to the door, leaning heavily on my crutches. The moment Mark opened the door, I knew something was wrong. His face was twisted in anger, not concern. "Where have you been? I come home to no dinner, and you're nowhere to be found," he barked, before even greeting me. I was in shock, pain throbbing through my leg, as I tried to explain. "Mark, I broke my leg. I've been in the hospital all day. Look." I lifted the edge of my coat to show him the cast, thinking surely this would soften his anger. But it didn't. "Excuses, Julie. Always excuses with you. A broken leg is no reason for laziness," he snapped back, as if my injury was a personal inconvenience to him. Tears pricked my eyes, not just from the pain but from the utter disbelief. "Mark, I can't cook or clean properly like this. Maybe we could hire an au pair, just for the 3 months until I'm better?" His response was a laugh, short and bitter. "Spend my money because you can't do your duties? No way. You'll just have to manage." And just like that, I was left to fend for myself. Cooking was a nightmare, each step a new level of pain. Cleaning was even worse, trying to balance on crutches while wiping down surfaces and sweeping floors. Mark watched me struggle every day, offering no help, only criticism if something wasn't up to his standard. That was my breaking point. Not the fall, not the broken leg, but the realization that the man I married had so little compassion, so little love left for me. I was more than just hurt, I was broken, not just physically, but deep down where it mattered most. It was a day like any other, or so I thought, hobbling around on one leg, trying to keep the house up to Mark's impossible standards. The pain was a constant companion, but on that day, it was overshadowed by a growing sense of defiance. I'd reached my limit, fed up with the way Mark treated me, especially after the incident with the trash. I'd forgotten to take it out, a simple mistake, but Mark turned it into a spectacle. He came home, saw the full trash can, and without a word, dumped it right there on the floor next to me. "Clean it up," he ordered, his voice cold as ice. I did as he said, fighting back tears, the pain in my leg burning with each step I took to tidy his mess. That night, I couldn't sleep, thoughts racing through my head. By morning, my decision was made. I confronted him with divorce papers, my hand trembling, but my resolve firm. Mark just laughed, a sound that made my blood boil. "You think you can scare me with divorce?" he scoffed, taking the papers, but not looking at them. "This time I'm not scaring you, Mark. I'm serious," I said, meeting his gaze, trying to convey just how much I meant it. His laughter stopped, replaced by a smirk. "Fine, I'll sign them. But let's do this properly, go to a lawyer in the city." I should have known it was too easy, too smooth. But I was desperate to be free, to end this nightmare. So, I agreed, and we drove together. Halfway there, on the highway, he pulled over, mumbling some excuse about the wheel needing air. "Get out for a sec," he said. I trusted him. I got out. And then, before I could even realize what was happening, he drove off, leaving me there, alone and stranded with my broken leg in the biting cold. Panic set in, but I had to act. I called him, using the recording function on my phone, because I needed evidence, proof of this cruelty. "Mark, come back. This isn't funny. I said, my voice shaking from cold and fear. His laughter crackled through the phone, icy and sharp. Facing the consequences of your decision, Julie. You want to be independent? Solve this yourself. And then he hung up. I was left standing there on the side of the road, cars whizzing by, my heart sinking. Betrayed, abandoned, but most of all, determined. That's when a car pulled up. To my surprise, it was my former boss, Mr. Reynolds, who also happened to be Mark's boss. His brow furrowed in concern as he rolled down the window. Julie, what on earth are you doing out here, especially in this condition? He asked, his voice laced with worry. I hesitated, not sure where to start or how much to share. But then, the floodgates opened. I told him everything, how Mark had been treating me, the accident, and finally, how he left me stranded on the side of the highway with a broken leg. The words poured out, raw and unfiltered. Mr. Reynolds' expression darkened with each word I said. This is unacceptable, Julie. Get in the car. We're going to sort this out, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He drove me to his office, offering me a hot coffee that warmed my hands but couldn't touch the chill in my bones. After I settled in, he excused himself for a moment. I didn't know what he planned, but I trusted him. He returned shortly, mentioning he had invited Mark over under the guise of an urgent meeting. When Mark walked in and saw me, his face went white as a sheet. Julie? What? Sit down, Mark. We have a lot to discuss. Mr. Reynolds interrupted, his voice calm but with an edge that made Mark comply without a word. Mr. Reynolds didn't mince his words. Mark, I've been informed of your behavior, both as a husband and indirectly as an employee. It's inexcusable. I can't have someone who exhibits such cruelty on my team. You're fired. Mark tried to defend himself, throwing a panicked look my way. Julie, tell him you're exaggerating. This is just a misunderstanding. That's when I played the recording of our last conversation, the one where he laughed after abandoning me on the highway. The room fell silent as my voice and Mark's laughter filled the space. There was nothing left for him to say. He knew it, I knew it, and Mr. Reynolds knew it. Mark left the office, head hung low, the finality of the situation settling around us like a heavy cloak. Mr. Reynolds turned to me, his expression softening. Julie, I'm so sorry you went through this. If there's anything I can do. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Just this. Listening to me, believing me. It's more than I could have asked for, I said, the weight of the past months starting to lift ever so slightly. He nodded, understanding. You're welcome here, Julie. Take some time to heal, and if you ever want to come back, your job is waiting for you. Finally, it was over. The court didn't just grant me the divorce, they ordered Mark to pay me $100,000 for all the hell he put me through. Having that recording was a game changer. It was the undeniable proof that swung everything in my favor. When Mark's parents heard the whole story, they couldn't even look him in the eye. They came to me, all apologies and sorrowful faces. We're so sorry, Julie. We had no idea. I told them straight. You've got nothing to apologize for. It's not your fault he turned out this way. But inside, I felt a bitter sort of satisfaction knowing they saw Mark for who he really was. Losing his job was the cherry on top. Mr. Reynolds didn't waste any time showing Mark the door, and he made a point of telling me I was welcome back anytime. So, I went back to work, back to something resembling a normal life. It felt good, walking into the office, knowing I'd stood my ground and came out the other side stronger. With the divorce settlement, I rented a cozy apartment, a little place just for me. It wasn't just a new home, it was a fresh start, a place where the shadows of my marriage to Mark couldn't reach me. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the memory of Mark and all the pain he caused began to fade. I threw myself into work, into rebuilding myself and my life. I made new friends, rediscovered hobbies I'd forgotten I loved, and began to enjoy life again, on my own terms. Sometimes, colleagues would tiptoe around the subject of my divorce, but I'd just laugh it off. That chapter's closed, I'd tell them. I'm all about the next adventure now. And it was true. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my destiny. Mark had tried to break me, but in the end, he was just a footnote in my story, a bad memory fading into insignificance. I'm not one for fairy tales or serendipity. My life's pretty much been about balance sheets, tax codes, and making sure numbers line up just right. Name's Emma, by the way. I've been an accountant for the better part of my adult life, recently turned auditor after a brutal few years hitting the books. That's the thing about me, when I set my sights on something, I get it done. No fluff, no fuss. This story kicks off on an unremarkable Tuesday. I was out hunting for a calculator, not just any calculator, mind you, but one of those fancy ones that can practically do your taxes for you. I found myself at this electronics sale downtown, thinking I'd swoop in and out. That's when the universe decided to throw me a curveball in the form of Alex. Alex was also in the market for a calculator, which I found out when we both reached for the last high-end model on the shelf. Our hands brushed, and I looked up into the most annoyingly charming face I'd ever seen. He had this cheeky grin like he'd won some sort of prize. "Looks like we've got ourselves a standoff," he said, his voice smooth but edged with amusement. I raised an eyebrow, not in the mood for games. I saw it first. I shot back, trying not to show any interest in the banter. But deep down, I was mildly entertained. "Oh, come on. Let's not start World War III over a calculator. How about we grab a coffee and talk it over?" he suggested, that grin still plastered on his face. The cafe was a little joint a few blocks away, quiet enough for us to chat. Turns out, Alex wasn't just some guy with a weird thing for calculators. He worked as a production director at his family's company, something to do with manufacturing that was miles away from my world of numbers. "So, you're like, what, a big shot at your company?" I asked, sipping my coffee, trying not to sound too impressed. He laughed, shaking his head. "Hardly. I just try to keep things running smoothly. It's my dad's business, really. I'm just the guy making sure we don't screw it up." The conversation flowed easier than I expected. Alex had a way of making you feel like you were the only two people in the room. He was curious about my work as an accountant, which no one outside of my profession had ever been before. "So you catch people trying to sneak a fast one with their finances?" he asked, intrigued. "Something like that. I make sure everything adds up. And when it doesn't, that's when I really get to work," I explained, warming up to the subject. "It's like being a detective, but for numbers." "Sounds intense. I can barely balance my checkbook without breaking a sweat," he admitted with a chuckle. We talked about everything and nothing, from our worst coffee experiences to the state of the economy. Before we knew it, hours had passed. Alex was easy to talk to, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely relaxed. As the cafe started to hint at closing time, Alex finally broached the subject of the calculator again. "So, about our little standoff earlier," he began, trailing off with a smirk. I laughed, realizing I'd almost forgotten about it. "Keep it. I've got a spare at home anyway," I conceded, feeling unexpectedly generous. "Only if you let me take you out for dinner. Consider it a thank you for the calculator, and for the company today," he countered, his tone hopeful. I hesitated, not used to making spur-of-the-moment decisions like this. But something about Alex made me want to throw caution to the wind, just this once. "Deal. But if you're late, I'm taking the calculator back," I joked, fully aware I was stepping into uncharted territory. Life after meeting Alex took a turn for the unexpected. Our coffee dates turned into dinner dates, and before I knew it, I was deeply entangled in a world far removed from my spreadsheets and financial reports. It wasn't just about numbers anymore, it was about us, building something together. One evening, Alex and I were lounging on my couch, a mess of Chinese takeout containers between us. We'd been seeing each other for a solid few months by then, and everything felt right. comfortable, even. So, Emma, Alex began, his tone a bit more serious than the casual banter we'd been sharing. I've been thinking. I eyed him suspiciously, a half-eaten spring roll, paused, mid-air. Thinking can be dangerous. What's up? He chuckled, reaching for my hand. Dangerous, huh? Well, I was thinking about us. About how good this feels. I don't want to scare you off, but I really see this going somewhere. I set the spring roll down, my appetite suddenly replaced by a swarm of butterflies in my stomach. I feel the same, Alex. It's been easy. You know, in a good way. Exactly. He was animated now, his eyes lighting up. So, I was wondering, what do you think about us moving in together? The question caught me off guard. Moving in together was a big step, a leap into a future I hadn't allowed myself to fully imagine yet. But looking into Alex's hopeful eyes, I couldn't find a single reason to say no. I think I'd like that, I replied, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Alex's grin could have lit up the room. Yeah? Yeah, I confirmed, my own smile mirroring his. Meeting Alex's family was the next natural step. His father, a self-made man with a firm handshake and a gaze that could either warm you up or freeze you out, welcomed me with surprising warmth. Emma, Alex hasn't stopped talking about you. Glad to finally meet the woman who's stolen his heart. His words were straightforward, no fluff, kinda like me. But it was Sarah, Alex's sister, who was a tougher nut to crack. As head of the purchasing department in their company, she eyed me like I was a column of numbers that didn't add up. So, an auditor, huh? Bet you're good at spotting any funny business. Her tone was loaded, like she was testing me. I do my best, I replied, keeping it cool, but friendly. I wasn't there to audit them, after all, just trying to make nice with the family. The wedding was nothing extravagant, just close friends and family. Alex and I weren't about the flash, we preferred something that felt more us. It was perfect, a testament to what we had together, solid and real without the need for show. 6 months into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. Telling Alex was a moment I'll never forget. His face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning, and he scooped me up in his arms, spinning me around. We're going to be parents, Em. Can you believe it? We were over the moon, but sharing it with his family? We decided to break the news over dinner at his dad's place, the same house where I first met the old man and Sarah, who always looked at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. The table was set like we were royalty, and his dad, Mr. Thompson, was in high spirits, probably because he thought this was just another casual family dinner. Little did he know. So, Emma, Alex tells me you're settling in just fine at the new place. That true? Mr. Thompson asked, passing me the potatoes. Yeah, it's been great. Feels like home already, I replied, trying to sound as relaxed as possible, despite the butterflies doing somersaults in my stomach. Sarah was poking at her food, silent up until now. Must be nice, playing house. Hope you're not distracting my brother too much from work, she said, her tone sharp like she was aiming darts my way. Alex jumped in before I could reply. Sarah, cut it out. Emma's been nothing but supportive. Plus, we've got some good news to share. He looked at me, nodding for me to go ahead. I took a deep breath. Well, the thing is, we're expecting a baby. You could have heard a pin drop. Mr. Thompson's fork paused mid-air, and even Sarah stopped her dart-throwing act to stare. A baby? Mr. Thompson finally broke the silence, his voice a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. Well, I'll be. Congratulations. This is wonderful news. He got up to hug us both, a wide grin spreading across his face. Sarah's reaction was cooler, forced even. Yeah, congrats. A baby, huh? That's big news. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and I could tell this wasn't what she expected to hear. Mr. Thompson, oblivious to the tension, was already making grand plans. We'll need to celebrate properly. And think about the future too. A grandchild. This calls for a toast. He was already fetching his best bottle, the mood significantly lifted. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of congratulations and plans for the future. Mr. Thompson was already joking about how the baby would take over the company one day, a comment that made Sarah's smile falter even more. Planning the baby shower wasn't even on my radar until Sarah brought it up out of the blue. We were at a family dinner, one of those where Mr. Thompson tries to make sure we all still liked each other. Sarah had been quieter than usual, which, if you knew Sarah, meant she was plotting something. Out of nowhere, she's like, "So, Emma, when's the baby shower? We should throw you one." Alex choked on his drink, and I swear, even Mr. Thompson looked like he'd seen a ghost for a second. Me? I was caught off guard. Hadn't really thought about it, I admitted, shooting a puzzled look at Alex, who shrugged. "Well, it's settled then. I'll organize it. It'll be at our place," Sarah announced, as if her deciding made it official. Alex tried to protest. "Sarah, you don't have to." But she cut him off. "Nonsense. It's what families do. Right, Dad?" Mr. Thompson, bless him, just nodded, probably too surprised or scared to disagree. So, it was settled. Sarah was throwing the baby shower, and I had this nagging feeling in my gut that her sudden generosity wasn't without strings. The day of the baby shower arrived, and honestly, it was more than I expected. The decorations were tasteful, the food was great, and Sarah played the part of the gracious hostess a little too well. Relatives I hadn't met yet were cooing over baby clothes and sharing unsolicited advice. It was all going surprisingly smooth, which should have been my first clue that something was up. Towards the end, just as people were starting to leave, Sarah made a show of clinking her glass to get everyone's attention. "Before we all go, I just want to say something," she started, her voice dripping with a sweetness that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Recently, we've had some things go missing in the house. Just small stuff, but still. I hate to ask, but could everyone just check their belongings? Just to be sure." The room went quiet. It was like one of those moments in a movie where you know something bad's about to happen. People started awkwardly rummaging through their bags and pockets, and I felt this sinking feeling in my stomach. "And Emma," Sarah turned to me, a smile plastered on her face, "I couldn't help but notice you putting something in your purse earlier. Mind showing us what it was?" My heart was racing. "Sure, Sarah. I've got nothing to hide," I said, my voice steady despite the panic setting in. I opened my purse and turned it upside down, letting its contents spill out on the table. Among the usual mess, a pair of diamond earrings clattered onto the surface. I froze. Those weren't mine. Sarah's smile widened. "Looks like we found our thief. We need to call the police." The room erupted into whispers, and I could feel every eye on me. I was mortified. "Those aren't mine. I swear," I managed to say, but my voice was barely above a whisper. Alex was by my side in an instant. "Enough, Sarah. We'll handle this ourselves," he said, his voice cold. The party broke up quickly after that. Accusations and confused goodbyes filled the air as people left. I was in a daze, the evening a blur of embarrassment and confusion. Once everyone was gone, I confronted Sarah. "Why would you do that? You know those aren't mine." Her response was a shrug. "Prove it." The ride home from the baby shower was like sitting on a ticking bomb. Alex was tight-lipped, hands clenched around the steering wheel, while I stared out the window, my mind racing. The silence between us was suffocating, but I was scared to break it, scared of what might come out. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Alex, you believe me, right? Those earrings. I've never seen them before tonight." He glanced at me, his jaw working like he was chewing on the words, before spitting them out. "Of course, I believe you. It's just. Sarah wouldn't do something like this without a reason. It doesn't make sense." The next morning was awkward. Alex was trying, I could tell. He made breakfast, something he never did, and kept shooting me these little looks like he was checking if I was still there with him. I talked to my dad. He wants us to come over, talk about what happened, Alex said, breaking the silence over eggs and toast. I put my fork down, appetite gone. And what? Defend myself? Prove I'm not a thief? It's not like that, Em. He's just concerned. We all are. Alex tried to explain, but his words felt like band-aids on a bullet wound. At Mr. Thompson's house, the air was charged. Sarah wasn't there, probably for the best, because I wasn't sure I could handle seeing her without lunging across the room. Mr. Thompson looked like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, a look I hadn't seen before. Emma, Alex tells me there's been a misunderstanding. He started, his voice heavy. A misunderstanding? I repeated, incredulous. Your daughter accused me of stealing, in front of everyone. How is that a misunderstanding? Mr. Thompson sighed, a deep, weary sound. Sarah has her reasons for doing things. Sometimes, they're not clear to the rest of us. So, her reasons justify publicly humiliating me? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. It's not like that. We just need to get to the bottom of this, Alex interjected, but I was beyond listening. The days following the disaster of a baby shower were tense. Alex and I were tiptoeing around each other, and around the issue with Sarah, like it was a sleeping dragon. Neither of us wanted to poke it, but we both knew it was there, breathing fire on everything. It was late one evening, the kind where the silence feels too loud, that Alex finally broke. He came into the living room where I was pretending to read a book, my mind miles away. That's when the unexpected happened. Alex's phone rang, and the look on his face when he saw the caller ID was enough to freeze my blood. It was his dad. Hey, Dad. What? Now? Alex's voice was tense, his brows furrowed. After a moment, he nodded, though I knew his dad couldn't see. Okay, we'll be there. He hung up, looking at me with eyes that suddenly seemed older. That was my dad. He wants us to come over. Says it's urgent, about the company. The ride over was quiet, the kind of quiet that screams. When we got there, Mr. Thompson was waiting, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last week. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Thank you for coming. We have a situation, he began, voice grave. What kind of situation? Alex asked, straight to the point. It's the company. We're in trouble. Financial trouble, Mr. Thompson admitted, his usual strength wavering. My heart sank. What happened? I couldn't help but ask, the auditor in me needing to know. Mr. Thompson sighed, a long, tired sound. It's a lot of things. Bad deals, lost contracts. But there's more. I found discrepancies in the accounts. A lot of money's gone missing. Alex looked like he'd been punched. How? How did this happen? That's the thing. It seems like it was on purpose. Someone's been sabotaging the company from the inside. I felt cold, a dread settling in. Do you know who? The question hung in the air, heavy. Mr. Thompson met my eyes, then Alex's. I have my suspicions. It's why I needed to talk to you both. It's Sarah. The name dropped like a stone, sinking everything with it. Alex went pale. Sarah? But why? How can you be sure? I'm not completely. That's why I need your help, Emma. You're an auditor. You see things others don't. I need you to look into the company's accounts, discreetly. It was a lot to process. My mind was racing, thoughts tumbling over each other. I'll do it. I'll help you get to the bottom of this. The first step was getting access to all the financial documents, which Mr. Thompson provided without hesitation. Everything's in the company's server. I've given you full access, he had said, looking older and more tired than I remembered. Find whatever you can, Emma. We're counting on you. Armed with my laptop and a pot of coffee that seemed to perpetually refill itself, I set up shop in our home office. Alex, bless him, tried to help where he could, but numbers were never his strong suit. I feel like I'm looking at hieroglyphics, he admitted one evening, squinting at the screen over my shoulder. It's not so different, actually. Each number tells a story, I said, half joking. You just need to know the language. The deeper I dug, the uglier the picture became. There were transactions that made no sense, contracts signed with companies that seemed to exist only on paper, and payments for goods that were either never delivered or grossly overpriced. Look at this, I pointed out to Alex, showing him an invoice for materials that was 3 times the market rate. This is textbook kickback territory. He looked at the figures, his brow furrowing. But why? Why would Sarah do this? It doesn't make any sense. Anger and frustration were simmering beneath the surface of his voice. I knew he was struggling to reconcile the sister he thought he knew with the evidence we were uncovering. One evening, after a particularly long session of cross-referencing invoices with delivery notes, Alex let out a deep sigh. We're going to have to confront her, aren't we? I closed my laptop, the weight of his words settling between us. Yeah, but not yet. We need irrefutable proof first. We can't accuse her based on suspicion alone. It was late one night when I finally closed my laptop, the last piece of the puzzle slotting into place. We had it. Proof that Sarah had been embezzling from the company, signing off on deals that benefited her personally at the expense of the company's health. We were gathered in the boardroom, a room that had seen better days, with the weight of the company's future hanging in the balance. The air was thick, charged with anticipation and dread as Mr. Thompson, Alex, Sarah, and I, along with the rest of the board, sat around that imposing oak table. As you're all aware, we've been facing significant financial discrepancies within the company. I started, my voice steady despite the fluttering in my stomach. My investigation has uncovered the source of these issues. All eyes were on me, including Sarah's, which flickered with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe, or defiance. I found that contracts for equipment and materials have been signed with companies that exist only on paper. These contracts were grossly overpriced, and the equipment and materials supplied were either faulty or of subpar quality. I continued, laying out the evidence for everyone to see. The room was silent, the gravity of my words sinking in. I glanced at Alex, who gave me a small nod of encouragement. Furthermore, these transactions were arranged through figureheads, and it appears that personal remuneration was received for facilitating these deals. The total damage to the company amounts to more than $3 million, not to mention the severe impact on our reputation and the quality of our products. Gasps filled the room, and I saw Mr. Thompson's face harden with each word I spoke. And who? Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the tension. Was responsible for these transactions? All eyes shifted to Sarah as I said. The evidence points to our head of procurement, Sarah Thompson. The color drained from Sarah's face as the realization of her exposure hit her. Mr. Thompson looked as if he'd been slapped, the betrayal by his own daughter a blow he hadn't seen coming. Sarah, how could you? Mr. Thompson's voice was a mix of anger and heartbreak. You've not only betrayed this company, but your own family. Sarah shot up from her seat, her voice shaky, but defiant. I did what I had to. I deserved recognition, a chance to prove myself, but all you ever cared about was Alex and now her. She spat, pointing at me. Mr. Thompson was on his feet now, his usual composure shattered. You've done irreparable harm. I am disowning you and disinheriting you. You will face the full extent of the law for what you've done. The room erupted into chaos, with board members whispering among themselves, shock written all over their faces. The sound of police entering the room to detain Sarah was almost surreal, a stark reminder that the consequences of her actions were very real. After the storm had passed, and Sarah had been taken away, Mr. Thompson turned to me, his eyes softening. Emma, you have done this company, and this family, a great service. You've shown a strength and integrity that is rare. Thank you. After all the dust settled and Sarah faced the music, getting slapped with an 8-year sentence, things started to shift for us. Not only did she have to cough up a chunk of change to the company for all the mess she caused, but she also had to pay me directly. Yeah, for that stunt she pulled with the earrings, trying to paint me as a thief. In the midst of all this chaos, life threw us a beautiful curveball. I gave birth to our little bundle of joy, a healthy baby who brought so much light into our lives. It was like, amidst the storm, we found our sunshine. And let me tell you, this kid has a special bond with their granddad. Whenever we visit Mr. Thompson, it's heart-melting to see them together. The old man's face lights up in a way I've never seen before. It's pure love, no two ways about it. Amidst adjusting to new motherhood and all, I took a giant leap, started my own auditing firm. Yeah, took all that mess and turned it into a mission. Now, I'm out here helping folks straighten out their books, catching mistakes, and stopping fraud before it can even start. It's tough work, but someone's gotta do it. Plus, having gone through what we did with the family company, I've got a personal score to settle with any sort of financial foul play. I'm Jess, a 26-year-old nurse who's seen enough to know life ain't always a smooth ride. The day that rock band rolled into town was a break from the usual chaos. Their music was my escape, something my soul craved more than my next breath. That night, I decided to let loose, heading to their concert alone, not knowing it'd change my life. The arena was packed, the air electric with anticipation. I wove through the crowd, finding a spot that felt like it was made just for me. That's when I bumped into him, literally. A tall guy with a mischievous smile, wearing a band tee that looked like it had seen better days. "Hey, watch it!" I snapped, more out of surprise than annoyance. "Sorry, didn't see you there," he replied, his grin widening. "You here alone?" "Yeah, and by the looks of it, so are you." I shot back, my defenses up. He laughed, a sound that seemed to cut through the pre-concert buzz. "Name's Tom. And yeah, I wouldn't miss this for the world. These guys are like the soundtrack to my life." "Jess," I said, offering a hand grudgingly. His grip was firm, reassuring somehow. "Same here. Grew up with their music." We chatted as if we'd known each other for years, not minutes. Tom had a way of making me laugh, really laugh, something I hadn't done in a while. When the concert started, we were lost in the music, together yet alone in our little bubble. After the encore, neither of us wanted the night to end. "Know a decent cafe around here?" Tom asked, his eyes searching mine. "Might do. Follow me," I said, leading the way. The cafe was quiet, a stark contrast to the concert's frenzy. We found a secluded corner, our conversation flowing as easily as the coffee. "So, nurse, huh? Bet you've got stories," Tom said, his voice a mix of curiosity and respect. "More than I can count. And what about you? What's your deal?" I asked, leaning in. "I work in IT. Not as exciting as saving lives, but it pays the bills." He shrugged, a hint of humility in his eyes. We talked about everything and nothing, from our craziest dreams to our mundane daily gripes. It felt natural, easy. Before we knew it, hours had passed. "Should probably get going," Tom said reluctantly. "But I don't want this to be the last time we talk." "Me neither," I admitted, feeling a connection I couldn't quite explain. We exchanged phones, typing in our numbers with the promise of a call. As we said goodbye, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was the music, the night, or just Tom himself, but I walked away feeling lighter, my heart pounding in my chest. After a few months of dating Tom, the day came to meet his family, or more accurately, his mom. He'd been upfront about living with her, saying she was all he had in terms of family. I respected that. My own family was just my grandma, after all. Tom's place was modest, a cozy little house with a garden that looked like it needed a bit of love. "Mom's inside," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice as we approached the door. It struck me then how important this was to him, and suddenly, I was the one feeling jittery. The door swung open to reveal a woman in her late 50s, her hair a tangle of curls, eyes sharp as they landed on me. "So, you're Jess," she said, her voice carrying a note that I couldn't quite place. "Was it curiosity?" Suspicion? Nice to meet you, Mrs. Johnson, I offered, extending a hand that she took after a brief hesitation. Call me Linda, she said, leading us into the living room. The place was neat, filled with photos of Tom at various ages. It was clear he was the center of her world. We sat, and Linda wasted no time diving in. Tom tells me you're a nurse. That's a hard job. You plan on doing that long? I nodded, sensing where this was heading. I love my job, but I'm also planning to study further, maybe become a doctor someday. Linda's eyes narrowed a bit. A doctor, huh? That's a lot of school. Expensive, too. Tom jumped in, trying to smooth the waters. Mom, Jess is really passionate about her work. It's one of the things I admire about her. Linda turned her gaze to Tom, and then back to me, her expression softening slightly. Tommy here has always been my rock. After his dad left, it was just the two of us. I've given everything to him, you know. I caught Tom's eye, a silent communication passing between us. I knew this was hard for him, torn between the two most important women in his life. Linda continued. I rely on Tom for a lot. He's been so good to me, giving me half his salary every month. It's only fair, after all I've sacrificed. The air in the room felt heavier, the tension palpable. I didn't know what to say. It was clear Linda expected this arrangement to continue, even with me in the picture. And what about your family, Jess? Linda's question snapped me back to the moment. I was raised by my grandmother, I said, my voice steady. My parents died when I was young. Grandma's all I have. Linda nodded, a strange satisfaction in her eyes. Well, if you and Tom are serious, I'd expect you to contribute as well. $800 a month should cover it. I choked on the tea I'd been sipping. $800? Tom's hand found mine under the table, squeezing it gently. We'll work something out, Mom. Jess and I are a team now. When Tom and I decided to tie the knot, we knew it wouldn't be a lavish affair, but nothing prepared me for the battle over our wedding plans. Linda had her own ideas about saving money, which basically meant cutting down our guest list to a handful and scrapping any unnecessary celebrations. I wanted simple, sure, but I also wanted some joy, some celebration of us. One evening, as we sat down with Linda to discuss the wedding plans, the tension was thicker than the coffee Tom had brewed. So, I was thinking, Linda began, in that way that told you she wasn't just thinking, she was deciding. Why waste money on a big venue when we have a perfectly good backyard? Tom squeezed my hand under the table, a silent plea for patience. Mom, Jess, and I were hoping for a bit more, celebration. Not just a backyard thing. Linda's eyes narrowed, her lips pursing in that familiar line of disapproval. And who's going to pay for this celebration? You too? With what money? I took a deep breath, readying myself. We've been saving, Linda. And it's not like we want something extravagant. Just something a bit more special than the backyard. Linda scoffed. Special? You think spending money you don't have on one day is special? You know what's special? Security. Not starting your married life in debt. I could feel my patience wearing thin, but I held my ground. We understand the value of money, Linda. We're not talking about going into debt. Just a modest celebration at a small venue. We've done the math. Despite Linda's protests, we managed to reach a compromise of sorts, a small venue, close family and friends, and a strict budget. Linda insisted on overseeing the catering, claiming she could cut costs, which meant we ended up with a buffet that was more potluck than professional. On the day of our wedding, the venue looked, well, modest. My grandma, the one person from my family there, whispered to me as I readied myself. This Linda, she's a piece of work, isn't she? Just remember, dear, you're marrying Tom, not his mother. The ceremony was short and sweet. Tom looked handsome, and when I walked down the aisle towards him, the look in his eyes told me we'd made the right choice. It was our moment, and even Linda couldn't tarnish that. At the reception, as guests mingled and the homemade buffet was served, Linda took it upon herself to remind everyone how much money we'd saved. "Just think what they can now put towards their future," she announced to a group of our friends, who nodded politely, their expressions a mix of amusement and sympathy. Tom's best man, Mike, a childhood friend who knew the family dynamics all too well, leaned over to us with a grin. "Hey, at least she didn't charge entry, right?" I laughed, the tension of the past weeks melting away in the warmth of the moment. Tom wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me close. "We did it, Jess. Despite everything, we did it." "Yeah," I agreed, leaning my head against his shoulder. "And now, we start our lives together, just us." "And Linda," Tom added with a wry smile, earning him a playful jab in the ribs from me. Settling into married life with Tom was like navigating a boat on choppy waters. Our tiny rented apartment became our haven, a place where we planned to build our future together. But the shadow of financial strain loomed large over us, darkening even our brightest moments. One chilly evening, as we sat huddled over our budget spreadsheet, the reality of our situation hit me hard. "Look at this, Tom," I said, pointing at the screen. "After rent, bills, and your mom's $800, there's barely anything left for us." Tom rubbed his eyes, weary from the long day. "I know, Jess. But what can we do? Mom depends on that money." I sighed, frustration bubbling inside me. "But does she really need that much? We're barely scraping by as it is. And we've been putting off so many things, like fixing the car, and even thinking about a down payment for a house." Tom's expression hardened, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. "Jess, we've been over this. My mom raised me by herself. It's my duty to take care of her now." The argument ended with us in a tense silence, each stewing in our own stubbornness. But it didn't end there. Linda, ever the persistent one, took to calling me regularly, each conversation a thinly veiled reminder not to forget the $800 monthly tribute to her bank account. And when calls didn't cut it, she'd appear at our doorstep, lamenting her hard life and hinting heavily that a little more financial support wouldn't go amiss. I did my best to ignore the hints, to smile and nod and change the subject. But it grated on me, the constant pressure, the relentless reminders of a debt Tom felt we owed. Finally, one evening, after another of Linda's visits, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Tom, we need to talk about your mom," I started, the day's frustrations bubbling to the surface. "I'm tired, Tom. Tired of the hints, the constant pressure for more money. We're saving for a down payment, for our future. Can't she see that?" Tom's face went from puzzled to dark in seconds. "My mom is always right, Jess," he said, his voice icy. "You have no right to talk about her like that. She sacrificed everything for me." His words hit like a slap. "So what, our plans, our future, doesn't count for anything?" I shot back, anger rising. That was it. Tom shut down, walls up, and suddenly we were two strangers living in the same space. He wouldn't talk to me, not really. Our conversations dwindled to nothing, replaced by messages left on stickers on the fridge. "Need milk. Working late." The bare minimum of communication. One rare evening, when the silence felt a bit less oppressive, I decided to broach the subject, the words tumbling out of me before I could think better of it. "Tom, do you ever think about, us having kids?" Tom, who'd been half focused on some bills, looked up, his expression unreadable. "Kids? Jess, you know how Mom feels about that. She's already stretched thin with just us helping out." "Yeah, but it's not about her, is it? It's about us, what we want," I said, a hint of desperation creeping into my voice. Tom sighed, setting the bills aside. I know, but think about it. The money, the time. How are we supposed to manage all that? Plus, Mom, she's outright against it. Says it's too much expense, too much hassle." I felt a flash of anger, frustration. So, what? Her word is law now? What about what we want, Tom? What about our life together? The room went quiet again, the air thick with words we couldn't seem to say. Tom finally broke the silence. I just don't think now's the right time, Jess. Maybe later, when things are better. The next day, Linda's unannounced visit threw gasoline on the already smoldering embers. I heard you two talking about kids, she started, her tone accusatory as if the mere thought was an affront to her. Yeah, so? I said, my patience worn thin. Linda's eyes narrowed. So, you think you can just bring kids into this mess? You can barely take care of yourselves. Where do you think the money for that will come from? Out of what you should be giving me. Her words stung, not because they were true, but because of the blatant disregard for our autonomy, our desires as a couple. It's our life, Linda. Our decision. I shot back, my voice firm. Your decision? No, my son's decision. And he knows better than to make a foolish mistake like that, Linda countered, her voice rising. The argument spiraled from there, voices raising, words that couldn't be taken back flying between us. It ended with me saying something I'd never thought I'd have to. Maybe we shouldn't see each other for a while. This is too much. Linda left in a huff, and Tom, when he found out, sided with her. Our home felt more like a battleground, each of us entrenched in our positions, the idea of starting a family now a no man's land between us. It started with a phone notification that blinked innocently enough, but held a punch that knocked the wind out of me. Tom had transferred $1,000 to his mom this month, not the usual $800. My mind raced, confusion and anger swirling together. When I confronted him, his response was as cold as the look in his eyes. It's my decision, Jess. It's for my mom, he said, his voice flat, leaving no room for discussion. But we agreed on a budget, Tom. We have our own needs, our own plans. How could you just change that without even talking to me? I shot back, my voice rising with every word. Tom shrugged, a dismissive gesture that stung more than I expected. Things change. I don't have to consult you on everything. That was the moment I felt it, the crack in what I thought was solid, the betrayal of our partnership. But the worst was yet to come. Days later, a friend from work, Carrie, called me, her voice hesitant. Jess, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but I think you should know. She trailed off, the pause heavy with dread. What is it, Carrie? I urged, a sinking feeling in my stomach. I saw Tom's profile on a dating site. He even messaged me, not realizing who I was at first. I'm so sorry, she finished, her voice a mix of sympathy and discomfort. My world stopped. The air left my lungs in a rush, and I felt dizzy. Are you sure? I managed to whisper, clinging to a thread of hope that it was all a mistake. Yes, I'm sure. I can send you the screenshots if you want, Carrie offered, and true to her word, she did. The evidence was undeniable. There was Tom's picture, his profile, and the messages he'd sent, flirting, suggesting they meet up. The betrayal cut deep, a wound I wasn't sure could ever heal. When Tom came home that night, I was waiting, the screenshots glowing accusingly on my tablet. His reaction was one of shock, then anger, not at being caught but at being confronted. What, you're spying on me now? Invading my privacy? He exploded, the audacity of his anger almost laughable. Spare me, Tom. How long? How long have you been doing this? I demanded, my voice shaking with emotion. Tom's anger fizzled out, replaced by a resignation that was somehow worse. I don't know, Jess. A while, I guess. I needed something else. Something more. More than me. More than us, I said, the reality settling in like a stone in my stomach. Yeah, I guess so, he admitted, and with those words, the last of my hope evaporated. I want a divorce, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Tom looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I married. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a cold indifference. Fine, he said simply. If that's what you want. The divorce proceedings were quick, devoid of the messy entanglements that come with shared assets or children. I moved back to my grandmother's house, the only place that still felt like home, carrying with me the pain of betrayal, but also a sense of relief. 3 months post-divorce, and life had started to settle into a new kind of normal, or as normal as it could get without Tom and his mom, Linda, in the picture. That is until my world got rocked again, but this time by loss. My grandmother passed away, leaving behind a void no one could fill. Along with the heartache came a surprise. She left me her house and a hefty sum of $800,000. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more surreal, Linda showed up at my doorstep, bursting with a kind of frantic excitement that felt out of place given the recent funeral. "Jess, darling. I heard about your inheritance. What a blessing." Linda gushed, not wasting a second on pleasantries. I stared at her, incredulous. "Linda, what are you doing here?" She brushed past me into the house, as if we were still family. "Now that you've come into this money, you can surely afford to help me out a bit more. Not just the usual $1,000, but maybe double that? And, oh, a small gift wouldn't hurt. Something nice, expensive." Her words were like a slap in the face, each one more absurd than the last. But it was her next statement that really threw me. "And since you're so well off now, I suppose it's okay for you to have a baby with Tom. I mean, with this kind of money, why not?" I couldn't help it, laughter bubbled up from within me, loud and uncontrollable. Linda looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. "Linda, you do know Tom and I are divorced, right? 3 months ago. Your son and I are done. Over." The look on her face was priceless, a mix of shock, disbelief, and something that looked suspiciously like panic. "Divorced? But Tom never said." Why would he hide that? Maybe because he didn't want to crawl back to Mommy's house? Or maybe he thought you'd cut him off financially? I shrugged, the absurdity of the situation not lost on me. Linda fumbled for her phone, dialing Tom in a frenzy. The conversation was short and heated, her voice rising with every word until she finally hung up, her face pale. He said it's true. Said he didn't tell me because he wanted to maintain independence. Independence. Now he tells me this, when we could have been rich. "Linda, it's time for you to go," I said, my patience wearing thin. She stood, defeated, but then, with a last-ditch effort, she turned to me. "Jess, can't you reconsider? For the sake of the family? Tom made a mistake, but surely..." I cut her off with another round of laughter. "Linda, there is no family, not between me and Tom. And after everything, you really think I'd go back to him? Please, leave." One morning, as I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, the sun casting gentle patterns on the table, there was a knock at the door. Hesitant, I approached, half expecting Linda or, worse, Tom, to be on the other side. Instead, I found an old friend from nursing school, Maya, her face bright with a smile that was both comforting and contagious. "I heard about your grandma, Jess. I'm so sorry. And then I heard about, well, everything else," Maya said, stepping inside as I waved her in. We sat down, and over coffee, we caught up on life, on the turns mine had taken, and on her adventures since we last spoke. It was Maya who, after hearing my story, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Jess, it's time. Time to move on, for real. You've got this chance, this freedom. What's stopping you from taking the leap?" Her words struck a chord. "I've been thinking," I started, my mind racing with possibilities. "Maybe it's time to go back to school, like I always wanted. Get that degree, move into a field I'm passionate about." "Yes." Maya clapped her hands, her excitement palpable. "That's the spirit. Look, life's thrown you some curveballs, but you're still standing. And now you've got this incredible opportunity to do something just for you." The conversation with Maya lit a fire under me. It was the push I needed to finally make a decision, to move forward with purpose. I started researching programs that night, my heart set on advancing my career in a way I'd only ever dreamed of. but life has a funny way of testing you. Just as I was settling into this new chapter, Tom appeared on my doorstep one evening, looking every bit the man I once thought I knew. "Jess, can we talk?" he asked, a nervous edge to his voice I wasn't used to. I hesitated, a part of me curious, another part wary. "All right, Tom. Talk." He shuffled uncomfortably, looking around as if searching for the right words in the air around him. I heard about your inheritance. And about what you're doing with it. Going back to school, that's great, Jess." I raised an eyebrow, crossing my arms. "Thanks, Tom. Was there something else?" He sighed, a deep, weary sound. "I guess I just wanted to see if there was a chance for us. I'd been doing some thinking and—" "No, Tom," I cut him off, my voice firm but not unkind. "There's no chance for us. Not anymore. I've moved on, really moved on. And you should too." As he turned to leave, I felt a weight lift, a final closure on a chapter that had dragged on too long. In the days that followed, I found myself more focused, more determined. I was building a life on my own terms, free from the expectations and disappointments of the past. My studies gave me a sense of direction, and my grandmother's inheritance allowed me the freedom to pursue my dreams without restraint.